It's the end of the day with Ray. Hello, my friends. Well, folks, today we're going to jump on that gigantic, sharp, interactive board. I got to tell you right out front here that I got to do this a little bit different than I normally do. I'm having some software glitches, but I got to get this episode out there. HP finished their second quarter, and whew, today's episode, I just really want to focus on the declining revenue at HP and the declining overall profitability at HP, because I believe what HP is doing is they're proving to the whole world that they are 100% a commodity player. At a time when they should have been trying to figure out how to become more valuable to the end users they service and support, they decided they would become more of a commodity, I guess. Instead of investing in organizations that could help them become more valuable to the end users they service and support, they've spent over, almost $15 billion buying back their own shares. Totally insanity. Trying to reinvent themselves by buying their own shares. It hasn't been working very well for them. Because, folks, in 2021, HP did $63.5 billion top line revenue. And in FY 2024, they did $53.6 billion. And I got to remind everybody all the time, they bought a company called Poly that was doing $1.7 billion in revenue that was in that FY 2024 number. When you factor that in and you compare that revenue to that of 2021, folks, we're billions and billions and billions of dollars less. But yet we ran around and bought all our stock. Holy smokes. You got to go back. If you look at FY 2024, the revenue was less than FY 2023. But then you got to go back to FY 2017 to find less revenue than they produced in 2024. Like I said, other than FY 2023. And I don't believe that FY 2025 is going to even beat FY 2024. I really don't, folks. I mean, if you do the math and you compare them to the first half of FY 2024, let's forget about the quarter. Are we better than the quarter we were, last year? Let's talk about the first half of the year compared to the first half of the year. In FY 2024, the first half of the year, they were at $25,985 million. The first half of FY 2025, they're at $26.724 billion. And ladies and gentlemen, they grew their personal systems business by over $1 billion in revenue from FY 2024 first half. But their operating profit in that revenue declined. If you look at their print business, it's down $300 million. If you compare FY 2024 first half, FY 2025 first half, HP is down $293 million in the print business, and their operating profit, the ratio is down 0.5%. The dollar amount difference in operating profit in the print business from FY 2024, the first half, to the first half of FY 2025 is $77 million. If you look at that personal systems, I'm sure they're ringing the bell. We're growing. We sold $1 billion more in print equipment than we did the first half of FY 2024. Unfortunately, our operating profit is down $129 million from that additional revenue. Operating profit percentage ratio is down 1.5%. So, ladies and gentlemen, even with the growth of $1 billion plus in the personal systems business, they're down $206 million in operating profit from FY 2024 first half. When you look at the personal systems, and this is interesting because if they're going to continue to grow their revenue, but it's going to impact that operating profit, that's going to be an issue for HP. We know that HP makes most of their money in that print business. And where's that print business going? Well, it's kind of declining, right? People print less tomorrow than they'll ever print today. But when you look at the first half of FY 2024, the first quarter, they had a 6.1% operating profit in the personal systems. They had a 5.5% the first quarter of FY 2025. Second quarter 24, they had a 6%. Second quarter of FY 2025, the current year they're in, is 4.5%. And so, ladies and gentlemen, at the end of the day, they're down $176 million in operating profit in the personal system over last year. That's not good, right? Again, because they're a commodity player, because they spent all these billions of dollars buying back their own shares as opposed to buying strategic investments that would help them change the game, right? Ladies and gentlemen, if you look at the operating profit in the personal systems, you have to go to FY 22 in the fourth quarter, 11 quarters ago, to find an operating profit that matches the 4.5% that they had in the second quarter of FY 2025. You have to go back to the second quarter of FY 2019 to find it below 4.5%, which I believe is where they're headed. And that was 26 quarters ago, 6.5 years. So again, this is my lesson to HP. What? You ran around, you bought your own stock, you bought Poly, gosh knows where you're at with Poly. The numbers just get absorbed into there. Could have grown it as it fallen off a cliff. You can't make any money when you produce billions more in revenue in the personal systems because you don't have any value to those end users. You're a commodity player. The numbers are proven. And you can't bet on this print thing forever. Your operating profit is still pretty strong. You got to give them that. It's pretty strong operating profit. 19%. Overall, they're down. In operating profit from a revenue perspective, they're down, and from a dollar amount, they're down. And that revenue is going to continue to decline. Ladies and gentlemen, you can see on the red line going across here, they're not growing their revenue. And they might have a peak here, a quarter there, but at the end of the day, they're just not growing that print revenue. We all know it's going to continue to decline. And so will the profitability. Eventually, they're going to hit that wall. It'll happen. And HP, they talk about all this wonderful stuff they want to do. And they don't prove any of it as being successful. And they can talk about AI and PCs all they want. It's just lunacy because it's not helping them. AI and PCs, we'll sell more units, but, our AI, I guess, isn't good enough because we can't increase the price and we can't get any more operating profit. Is that really what we're going to do? The better the AI, the less profit they're going to make? I mean, maybe that's their mission. Who knows? But, I mean, folks, supply revenue on the print side continues to decline. It doesn't matter if their hardware is up like 1%. Who cares? They can talk about all the subscriptions they want, but the subscriptions, what the hell are these subscriptions in print? It's nuts. Subscriptions in paper. I mean, it's just crazy, because they never give you the details. How many of these damn subscriptions are active? How many are inactive? What's the average revenue of the subscriptions? HP, you continue to kick the can down the road. The accountability in that company from the analysts is amazing. There is none. And, their CEO run around talking about AI and PCs and everybody gets all excited. But I think the marketplace is starting to get a little wise. And they're starting to look at HP. And they're starting to ask the same kind of questions that I've been asking. What the hell is this nonsense buying back your own shares over almost $15 billion worth of purchases of their own stock? Totally insane. I wanted to look at their select cash and debt balance. Ladies and gentlemen, in quarter 2 of 2025, their gross debt was $10.8 billion. Their gross debt in first quarter of 2025 was $9.8 billion. It's gone up $1 billion in gross debt. Their net cash to debt in the second quarter of 2025 is $8.1 billion. If you look at their free cash flow, and let's go to the first half of FY 2024. The first half of FY 2024, the cash flow was sitting at $506 million. The first half of FY 2025, the free cash flow is a negative $531 million. Folks, here's something amazing. Their asset to equity ratio. Folks, I got to tell you something. Their liabilities are $40 billion, $75 million. Their assets are $38 billion, $799 million. That means they got a negative asset to equity ratio, negative minus 36.31%. Not really good. I look at that and think, what does that mean? They got more liabilities than assets. So I reached out to the guy that works at Google. His name's Al Overview, and I said, hey, tell me about this HP. Negative debt to equity ratio. That's what it says. Meaning its liabilities exceed its assets. This is a sign of financial distress as the company has negative equity. This negative equity, along with high debt to equity ratio, can limit a company's ability to secure financing and may be seen as a red flag by investors. Ladies and gentlemen, here's what I see as a red flag by investors. The fact that their CEO has been more obsessed with buying back their own shares than strategically making acquisitions to help that company become a more services-oriented business. They run out and they buy this human. The stuff they buy is just so stupid. This AI humane thing. What a crazy nonsense that is. Most people read that and laughed their ass off when they read it. So this is a stupid acquisition. But here's what I'm thinking the investors are really getting mad about. They're thinking, what if HP would have got together with Xerox way back then? Man, think of the things they could be doing. They'd have all these resellers all over the world selling HP compute products, bringing more value to those products. Think about it. I mean, what if HP, instead of buying back its own shares, bought Datto? You know, Datto, the big backup company. I mean, that thing only sold for $6 billion, which I thought was a lot of money, but HP could have bought it. And think about where they would be today. Wouldn't that be some valuable services to end users? I mean, what if they bought Lexmark? But no, they'd rather just keep buying back their own shares. I'm thinking the CEO's excited, you know. Hey, the only thing I understand is HP, so let's just buy back the shares of that company because we all work there, and that'll benefit us. And then we can all retire by the time this thing goes to hell anyway. We'll get our big paycheck and go out the door. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm telling you right now, if HP doesn't figure out how to become more strategic to their end users they sell to, they will in fact just become this massive commodity company that will be very unprofitable. They'll get pressure from all the other commodity players. And HP had a chance to do it. They continue to ignore chances to buy things that actually make sense as they buy nutty things like that humane thing. That is kind of funny, that whole story. But HP, I got to tell you, you know, you got to have a different mindset. This obsession of buying back your own shares is totally crazy. The investment community, I believe, is getting aware of the nonsense around the AI and the PCs because it's not really helping you grow the business. From a revenue perspective, the operating profit overall is getting lower as a company. And I know the folks at HP know this. Status quo is the killer of all that'll be invented. Don't get stuck there. And I'll see you all tomorrow.